Oh, maybe I should do that. I should go to
Toastmasters.
yeah, I've thought about Toastmasters for years, but I've just never joined. I know so many people who've benefited from it.
I liked it. It kind of morphed into something that was all city employees, and then all of a sudden it became.
Yes. Oh.
Hi guys.
Hi, Agent Max.
Hi, Mary.
Very nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Hi, Christina, Max's wife.
Hi.
Hi, Christine.
Little boy. Ricky.
Hello, sorry.
So I'm Jill O'Neill. I'm the one who kind of wrote you into this act.
Yeah.
Hi, yes. Nice to meet you.
Christine, nice to meet you.
Yes, I was at police headquarters with the promotion panels, just kind of volunteered.
Okay.
And
On the agent, for the agents or for whom?
yeah, I was the
Okay.
officers becoming agents, and
This is
then
this.
counterpart Daryl Savage was the ones becoming
Yeah.
sergeants.
Yes, so actually
You
Daryl
wanna
was
move it
in
around,
on
that's
my.
fine.
whole
It's okay.
applying
Perfect.
for
You're right
so-
across.
Yeah. So yes, we
That's
never
fine.
met, but out of the corner of my ear, I heard someone talking about your background and that you had originally come from Poland. We're looking for speakers from Eastern Europe.
I was wondering, how did she get you?
Yeah, very fortuitous, that's great.
Really? And then you haven't met before?
No,
You
because
heard about it?
I heard somehow your name came up in April
Uh-huh.
Wagner, who was sort of the liaison
Mhm.
to to all the panelists,
Right.
the civilians to me.
Right.
And somehow came up, and I just kind of grabbed her and she burst and said, no,
She is
HRC,
so respectful.
we have this speaker series, but you have that agent to contact me. And I said,
Wonderful.
sure.
Well, I was very honored to
Yeah.
hear from you
Did you-
guys.
how did you get
It's
this?
a privilege to come here.
Well, I asked April Lieutenant Wagner, and I said, you know, could you let Agent Max know that, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your last name.
Just Max, that's right. It's
How
Nielepko.
Nielepko.
No.
I was trying to figure out how to say it.
Yes.
It took me a while.
Yes. We're still working on it.
Still working on it. Are you the right?
Yeah,
Well, no, we've been married
Yes,
since '07.
Oh, okay. So now it's
Yeah.
3 kids in the
Yeah.
One more on the way.
Oh,
Yeah, she's hiding under her jacket.
Yeah.
So.
Cool. That's number
Baby 4, yes.
Yeah.
wow, it's wonderful.
Bit of an anomaly. 4 kids,
Well, no,
but
that's good. I like it.
You know, I'm from 104 myself, and I know
Yeah.
families like
I'm
ours are
wonderful.
small. And I
Oh,
just,
yeah. Perfect.
Yeah, no,
Oh,
you
really?
can fight with if you
Yeah,
don't
I
have
know.
something.
You need that. I had 2
Aw.
sisters, so it was always fun to kind
Yeah,
of
it's
wrestle
great.
around.
Yeah, I was from a
argue.
very, I wish I had that kind of neighborhood where everybody had big families and
Right.
things, but nowadays it's less common, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very
it's
true.
normal to me.
Very true. We're bucking the trend, so
Well,
we're bringing back the large families.
More, as my mom would say, more people to visit you when you're old.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
So I'll
That's
be
true.
good. So yeah, so the one thing that's so great about working with the
Mhm.
police though is, you know, I mentioned it to Lieutenant Wagner, I would love to get in touch with you.
Mhm.
Now, so often when you do something like that, you know,
It just
it's
gets
never
lost.
happened.
Yeah.
You ask a police officer to do you a
Yeah.
favor, she's on it. You
That's-
know?
that's
Really?
good.
Boy, that's
2 days
really
later, I
good.
get an
Yes.
email from your husband saying,
Wow.
hi,
Yeah.
April Wagner
She's
mentioned you
so
want to get in touch with
good.
me.
I'm like this.
I know.
Yes.
Well, I've been in the detective bureau for 5 years, so it's very,
It's gonna be hard to rattle him, right? Because he's seen it all. Like, a bunch of
Right,
HRC
right,
commissioners
right.
are
Well, I don't
And
Hi, I'm Kristen O'Kane.
Christina, Teresa, nice to meet you. The assistant director, she reports, works with Rob DeGoes. Oh, I see.
Yeah, because our regular liaison is.
So your office is at a different place?
She's one of the community services director. She's not the director, she works in community services. She's the head of human services.
Oh,
Right?
great.
Her big secretary.
I heard that.
And
She
Mary works,
emailed
and Mary's
us about
an old.
She's on
We have
vacation.
a
Division of 2. She's
Oh,
going back.
perfect. Holding on the fort.
She's from LA.
But maybe from Spring Break for her.
She's from
Baby
there.
one.
Wow.
She's
Wonderful.
not a baby anymore.
Okay.
I think she's like 8 or 9 now, right?
Okay.
Lucia?
To get to know us.
Still her
Yeah,
baby.
but when Lucy is on break, she does that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Kristen is pinch hitting for us, which is very fun.
Okay.
And this is
Well,
you
well,
Max, he's one of the, he's our secret
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
he's
yeah.
an agent with the police.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, this is our
How's it
vice
going?
chair, Greer Stone.
Good.
Good. When
Try
I
to
get
work
this,
for
we
your
got
work. Try to work
So
for work.
we usually start right on time,
Yeah, it's
when
almost
everybody
7.
makes it.
Yeah.
We're gonna miss
With Ann.
Maddie and Daryl though,
Oh,
right?
wow.
Daryl's done
I think Daryl said she wasn't coming to this evening.
it. And then Maddie is on
That's right.
business trip.
Forgot
It's on a
about
business
it.
trip, so
I
we
heard
need,
that at lunch.
so we need
One more.
Shelley and Valerie, right? Are they-
Yeah, Kristen said the parking was, did anybody park downstairs?
I did.
Was it bad?
Well, there was quite a line, but I had my handicap placard, so woo!
We didn't do that. Wow, we didn't have that fortune. So I parked across the street.
In the bank?
Yeah, that's my lot too, the secret lot.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
I was
everyone
I
knows
was
about
there.
it.
Take
You
care
don't
of it.
No, which one, which
As
one?
long as I'm not recording,
The bank
nobody
over
will
there?
have to
The
know.
bank over there?
No, there's a lot
Behind.
right behind it.
Oh, where they have the farmer's market, over by Gilman?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I know that lot.
You know that lot.
Oh,
I
I
didn't
knew
know.
that lot before you were born. I know all the secret lots.
Oh.
Yeah, they're all exciting. So yeah, I think we're
my.
oh, there's our two colleagues. So I think we're gonna be ready to
We're
start.
ready.
We're
So,
ready.
yeah.
We're here on this
Okay,
to-
so we usually have our
Hi.
speakers.
Kristen O'Kane.
Okay,
We're here.
back to our meeting
with the
stuff.
Sure.
have
Community
roll call.
Services
So maybe
Department.
you have a
I'm
seat
sitting
over there, and then we'll
today.
call
Perfect.
you maybe to the mic.
Yeah,
Nice to meet you.
perfect.
Here's my
Perfect.
seat here.
Yeah.
Sure, you are welcome
sit here.
to anywhere you like.
I got demoted to the end.
You got demoted. Yeah.
Oh well, oh well.
No, it's actually was Mandy's place, and then was last time he checked here. So his sister is not coming back.
Okay.
So you're taking his place. But anyway, but I think you put us in this end so we can talk in the speaker.
Just me. It's cold today.
Ah, it does make sense. Yes, it'll be right there. Well, I'm excited.
6. Oh my God. Oh, 6 p.m. I
Boy.
didn't think 6 is
I've been all over.
So many new
It was
faces.
pretty damn good for 6.
I've been on the you saw the email. Mila.
You did? Okay. Wow.
Yeah, I'm on Mila's bad list.
The what?
I'm on Mila's bad list.
How did you get on there?
Wait,
I didn't sign the
congratulations. I guess you're all getting a raise.
What is that?
It's on the
She wanted
news
me to sign
yesterday.
an
Pay
affordable
your
housing petition, but I just didn't
Sign
want to get
PQED.
politicized.
She hasn't reached out to me.
Yeah, did you sign?
Mila?
No.
Yeah, oh, so you did sign it?
She didn't ask.
I signed it.
Oh,
I
you got
signed
the
it.
email?
Was on the email?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that was.
You didn't.
Did you totally blow her
like
up?
that?
Okay.
I knew the police department hadn't gotten a
I
raise.
should high five. Now see people both on her list.
Seven, what
That's
is
what
it?
you're happy about.
Okay.
Right, right. So
They were going to other places.
that was a while ago. I signed
Why
it.
is that?
We'll be ready in just all right, everyone, we should probably settle in and get ready to start the meeting.
All
All right,
Okay, got it.
are we ready? You want to signal us when we're on? All right. Welcome, everyone. Good evening. This is the April, right, meeting of the Human Relations Commission, and we will go ahead and start with roll call.
Commissioner Alasani, Commissioner Chen,
Here.
Commissioner Gordon Gray,
Here.
Chair Onan,
Here.
Commissioner Savage, Commissioner Stinger,
Here.
Vice Chair Stone.
Here.
Great. And next we will have agenda changes, deletions, and requests. Is there anything we need to change on tonight's agenda, or add or delete? All right, then I think we are good. Our next order of business is the approval of the February minutes. I believe I was absent from that meeting, so I am not able to vote. Does that leave enough people, Mary, to approve? All right, so would someone like to make a motion if you were ready to?
I'll make the motion.
Second. Okay, second.
Okay, we have a simultaneous second.
All right.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oppose or abstain? One, me. And so I think we passed that motion. Thank you.
Great.
All right, and now we'll move into the business portion of our agenda. Item 1, I'm very pleased that we have a speaker tonight. I will turn this over to my colleague Teresa Chen to introduce
Right.
our speaker for this evening.
All right. Our speaker tonight is Agent Max Nilipko. I just learned how to say his name correctly. And then he's originally from Poland, and he's working at this Palo Alto Police Department. And we're so honored that he could be with us and tell us his experience as an immigrant growing up in the city of Palo Alto.
Well, thank you for having me. The honor is all mine, and I have some prepared remarks I'd love to go through, and then after that I'm happy to take any questions and participate in any discussion.
That would be wonderful. Oh, let me just ask, is Agent Max's mic on? Is everything okay with that? Okay, all right, please go ahead.
Okay. Well, good evening. My name is Max Nielepko, and first of all, I want to thank you all for the opportunity to speak with you today. I want to share with you an immigrant's experience of moving to Palo Alto. I was born in Poland. My parents and I left in 1986 as political refugees to get away from communism and to seek a better future. We traveled through the former Yugoslavia and into Spain, where we lived and waited for visa paperwork to move to a permanent home. Actually, our original destination was Australia, but because things didn't work out and an amazing opportunity presented itself, we came to the United States. After waiting in Spain for several months, the United States issued our family a visa, and we flew to San Francisco to start a new life. We arrived with little more than the clothes on our back and 2 suitcases, one of which was, of course, lost by the airlines. Luckily, the suitcase that contained a few of my toys, so obviously the important one, did arrive and did make it safely. We were very poor in the beginning. My dad was working 3 jobs at once to make ends meet for our family. When we lived in San Francisco, I remember my mom, who was very pregnant at the time, and I would ride the bus across the city to get to her doctor appointments. The bus ticket cost $1 and was valid for 2 hours. When we couldn't make the return trip in time, within that 2-hour time window, we would actually walk home to save money, to kind of give you an idea of what our financial situation was like. So to kind of put into perspective, you had a pregnant woman and a 5-year-old boy walking miles through the hills of San Francisco to save $1. And do you guys know what my mom would do with that $1? She would actually take me to a Goodwill store and buy me a toy before we came home. So I still actually have at home the very first toy I got when we first came to the country. And it's, kind of in a special spot. So after a few years, my dad got a job here in Palo Alto, and we soon heard about the Palo Housing Corporation, now called Palo Housing. We applied and we were offered an apartment. Having lived in San Francisco and Oakland and other cities, moving to Palo Alto was an amazing experience. My dad's commute was greatly reduced, and we were able to spend more time together as a family. I've always felt very fortunate that I and my 2 younger sisters had the opportunity to grow up in this community. Some of the amazing things about Palo Alto that we really enjoyed were the schools. I graduated from Palo, and my sisters graduated from Gunn High School. The parks and the open space, the nature that we have here in Foothills Park, and the baylands and the trees around town, it's truly stunning. The library system, especially with smaller kids, the children's library was always a favorite destination. And really, above all, it's kind of the kind, generous, educated, driven, and compassionate people that we have in this community, and that I think really form the fabric of who we are. We try to, as a family, give back and be involved. Over the years, my parents have volunteered at Palo Alto schools. They have refereed and coached Palo Alto sports teams. They have volunteered at the Children's Theater and other local programs. After I graduated from UC Davis, go Aggies, I decided to pursue a career in law enforcement. When I was offered a job by the Palo Alto Police Department, I was thrilled that I could come work here, and so I took the opportunity. Because I was just so happy I could serve the very community that had given so much to my family. I've worked in Palo Alto now for over 11 years, and I've spent the last 5 years in the Detective Bureau. Through my professional work and through my personal time, I've been able to get involved in our community in different ways. I found it personally very satisfying to be able to, and rewarding to be able to work with and kind of give back to Palo Housing through a variety of different ways. Kind of to wrap up, I think Palo Alto is really a unique place in the world. I've been lucky enough to travel and live in several different countries, and I really believe wholeheartedly that what we have here is very special. My family and I are very proud to call ourselves Americans, and we are so thankful that we have been part of the Palo Alto community. As immigrants, my family felt truly very welcomed as we started a new life here. And really, on behalf of my family, I just want to thank all of you and everyone in this entire community for helping us achieve things that we really never imagined would be possible. So that's kind of a little bit about me and my experiences as an immigrant. Really, they've been overwhelmingly positive. I felt that everyone, from our neighbors to certainly everyone from the city was always incredibly welcoming and helped us tremendously as we, kind of grew accustomed to a different way of life. And obviously I feel very thankful that I was able to go to Palo Alto schools and that, we had an opportunity to even live here, which without the Palo Alto Housing Corporation, we could have never done. So that kind of is a little bit about me, and if you have any questions or anything, I'm more than happy to talk about those.
Maybe I can start a question. Yes. One of the things that we heard from the previous immigrants talk about is their language problems, because at home they speak a different language. When they came over here and they had to learn English, there's tremendous amount of difficulty for them to connect with people because of the language barrier. I don't think it happened to you because you grew up here. What about your parents?
So my parents certainly still speak with a very noticeable accent. My dad took some English classes before we came here when we were still living in Poland and Spain, so he knew some very basic English. But my mom, myself, we didn't speak a word of English when we arrived. So for us, I can't say if it works for everybody, but what really worked well for me is, I took about a year before I started school
Yeah.
and started just picking up the language, and then pretty much my parents just sent me right into school, and it was kind of a trial by fire. So certainly the first couple months were a little difficult, but I think it was also really good for me in the long run because I quickly, learned the language and, started doing better academically, and, kind of that's the way it was for us. Yeah.
I'm just quite interested in your parents' situation. When they were here at the beginning, then a little English, not very much. How did they find jobs, and how did they have any difficulty in terms of looking for jobs? And then how did the people look at them, without speaking, fluent English?
Right. I mean, I think I spoke with my parents before coming here tonight, and
Right.
What they shared with me was that they felt that everyone was very welcoming and very accommodating, and always tried to really work with them, even if there were some maybe difficulties with or language barriers that existed. So, I think it only really took us maybe 6 months to a year to really become quite fluent, in the language. So as far as just purely focusing on the language skills, I think it really only took us maybe 6 months to a year to kind of get that going. And I mean, some of the work my dad was initially doing, was more, on the weekends he was literally kind of almost be a day laborer and would, kind of find jobs to pick up some extra money. In the evenings and at nighttime, he would work as a caretaker for someone. And then during the day, he was working as a librarian at the time. So maybe it didn't require a tremendous amount of, language skills and interaction, but it was also a good opportunity to kind of learn it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Do other people have questions?
Yeah, I do. Well, thanks for coming out and sharing your story with us, and thanks for serving the community
Thank you.
as you do, and most importantly, fellow Vikings. So
That's right. Vikings.
a strong connection there. I want to. What year did you start school here in Palo Alto?
So we came.
Well, at least what age? What
Sure.
grade?
I was in second grade when I
Okay.
started in Palo Alto.
What was your experience like going through the school district? Did you ever feel, because I mean, of course, kids can be meaner than the rest of the community. So did you ever feel different or isolated while in school with your, either in elementary school, middle school, high school, at any level? Did you ever feel like you were treated differently because of your experience?
I would say not at all. I'd say actually quite the opposite. I was very fortunate that all the friends that I kind of made, especially in Palo Alto schools, come from such diverse backgrounds. I mean, literally every corner of the globe, and so many different languages. I think that we definitely, it's not just a word that we throw out there. I think we really do have tremendous diversity in this community, and so I didn't feel as though I was somehow isolated or different. I felt like all of my friends that I was close with, in fact, had such tremendously diverse backgrounds that, in fact, it was more of a kind of a binding force for us. Yeah.
Great.
I had a question.
Yes.
Oh,
I'll speak to
do you think it's easier to integrate yourself in the community if you're European versus Asian? Or African American? Well, African American would be immigrant, but
Sure.
I just wonder because you look like us. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. I don't know. It's certainly a great question. I'm not sure that I can speak to it from experience. I had friends of various backgrounds and ethnicities, certainly growing up in school. And from what they shared with me, I think everyone was quite happy to be going to Palo Alto schools and to be kind of benefiting from, everything we have in this community. So I certainly hear and read about, maybe stories that are different than the ones that I experienced and those that were shared with me by my friends and, peers growing up. But I have to say that my experiences were overwhelmingly positive.
Okay.
Commissioner Singer, do you have a comment or a question?
I have a question. Yeah, first, thank you very much for sharing your story. You have a very unique perspective, having been here as a child and now working here as an adult. What would you suggest to the commission, to the city, if we were to find another immigrant family, another family applying for a visa? What could we do to make them have as successful an experience as you've had?
Great question. when I spoke with this about my parents, the really only suggestion that they had that they felt maybe would have made things even easier or more convenient would be just some kind of one-stop shop where you could go just for information about everything from housing to, for us, we were growing up, we were very, poor. So, we were always kind of on the hunt for scholarships and grants to allow, especially myself and my sisters to attend summer camps and programs that we otherwise couldn't afford to pay for. And sometimes, working directly with different groups and, camps and so forth, you could get those scholarships or grants, which would allow us to participate in those things. But sometimes, they just wouldn't have the money available. So I don't know if there would be a way to just maybe centralize some of those things, just housing and scholarships and, just kind of give people maybe almost some tools and education where they can go and get some resources to figure out how do you get these things accomplished and what do you do. And, I don't know if the city has any type of, fund or any money that could be set aside to even assist, children in the community that maybe, whatever background, wherever they come from, that if the parents just financially can't afford something, that, it's just a need-based kind of application that folks could fill out and allow kids to go to summer camps and programs and things like that.
Thank you for the suggestion.
Sure.
I really appreciate it. But you're saying if there is a consultant or counselor for specific immigrant families, that would be great.
Sure.
Right? For the adults, maybe they could help adults enroll in the adult English class.
Of course.
For children, help them apply scholarship or schools and look for opportunities, and that would be great, right? So you almost need an office, a person there to direct, like a school on the counseling service, like that kind of service, right?
I think so.
Yeah,
I mean, I know for us...
Specialized for the immigrant issues.
I think so. I mean, I know for us, we were very fortunate when we were living in one of the Alto Housing Corporation properties. We actually met some wonderful families there, and some of them were native English speakers. So I know that my mother would very much rely on some of her friends to help her in writing
Exactly.
applications for a scholarship, or kind of taking care of things, or helping her to understand a letter she received in the mail if there was vocabulary that didn't quite make sense to her. So we kind of developed those relationships on our own.
Yes.
But maybe if there was some kind of one-stop shop where people could go there. And I mean, I think nowadays with the technology that we have, it would be even just it could be as simple as a website or something.
It's a very good suggestion. That's very good. Yeah. What do you think about a welcoming event? Like if we have City of Palo Alto has an event, to welcome the newcomers every year, would that be good? Does it serve the purpose for new immigrants?
Sure. I mean, I don't think it could hurt.
But whether it is necessary or not.
Right. I mean, sure. I think if you had maybe some resources there and people could almost kind of walk around and learn about some of the things that are available, to whether it's immigrants or,
or newcomers.
Just people who have some kind of needs in the community. I think that'd be a great idea.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions also, Agent Max. One is, I was interested that when your family originally arrived in the U.S., you were in San Francisco, and you mentioned you'd also lived in Oakland for a while before moving here, and I guess you were maybe in the city and in the East Bay for a couple of years before you finally moved here?
Yes.
So, do you remember, I know you were young, but do you remember a different feeling of when you were in that larger, more urban environment versus when your family got to move here to Palo Alto in the 80s? Was there a different sense that you felt a better safety net? Did you feel more welcome here? I mean, I just wonder versus being in a city, and a new family.
Yes, I mean, definitely my perspective comes from that of,
a
child that was under 10. Some of the things I remember are kind of silly, like, the park down the street and things like that. But I certainly felt more secure in this community. I just felt like it wasn't quite as impersonal, and there wasn't just as much chaos as there was in larger cities. And certainly some of the schools I'd gone to prior to coming to Palo Alto were larger significantly, and had many more pupils in each class. So I felt like the Palo Alto school experience was unique as well. I felt like there was much more personal attention devoted to each student. So those were really the things that I kind of noticed. I think it was more based on my education and kind of my little sphere that I was in. So, yeah.
That's good. I did have another question as well. Today, and this is part of the reason the HRC has been interested in immigrant issues, we have noticed a trend that may be a little bit concerning, which is that sometimes new immigrants to the city tend to silo themselves into very isolated communities and not really engage with the wider community. And I know that, and I've heard even from Palo Alto Housing Corp, which you know well, that sometimes, for example, people from Russia will all tend to kind of, stick together. They experience some of the things that you talked about. They don't speak English well. They're more comfortable with people from their own country who speak their own language. But it's to the point that it's difficult to get them to even participate in events or to vote or to really understand some of the other amenities, of living in Palo Alto. And your family seems like early on you really just dove in and you really engaged with the community. And here you are today, just a prime example of someone who wanted to come back and serve. So I'm wondering, is there something about your experience here as a Polish immigrant family that you felt might be different from what we're seeing, the trends today in, say, the Chinese immigrant community or the Russian immigrant community, where people tend to want to just stay, off to the side altogether?
Well, I think for us it was twofold. I think number one, certainly the Polish community is just not as large as some of the other, communities we have in town. So maybe there weren't quite as many opportunities, to pursue that. But I think also kind of the other side of that is I think our family certainly made a very conscious decision to try to really kind of ingrain ourselves with the fabric of the community and get to know people and, really kind of learn about, we worked very hard to, certainly to, become a part of the community, really. So I know that, there certainly were some specific Polish churches and things in the community that, and just groups and associations that would come together. And there were some Polish immigrants that were much more involved in those than we were. And, we would certainly pay some visits and be friends with people and maintain those relationships. But just speaking only from my family's perspective, we were not overly focused on kind of being involved, with that community. I think we were much more focused on kind of becoming involved with just the Palo Alto community. And, it just had so much to offer. And, we kind of left Poland because of some of the, bad things that my parents had experienced there and just the lack of opportunities on the horizon. And, certainly I feel like, when we came here, this country and this community just offered us so much and gave us such an amazing future. And, I feel like certainly growing up and going to school and everything, I felt very much kind of a debt and an obligation to my parents to, make sure that I worked hard in school and, tried to learn as much as I could and give back. And, also maybe part of that too is because I had younger sisters. I was the first one in my family kind of going through high school and college and everything in the United States. So I think for me it was kind of both of those motivations existed to try to do well. But, at the end of the day for us, it was like, when we were in Spain, I know my family was my mom was pregnant at the time, so we were kind of getting to a point where she was nearing her third trimester, and we were kind of, the time crunch was upon us to, figure something out because we only had a temporary visa to be in Spain, and we were kind of in housing that a very kind local man basically would allow people to stay in free of charge who were political refugees and, coming through Spain. But it had a leaky roof and was kind of an old building that was somewhat abandoned. So we had time pressure to really, kind of figure out a more permanent solution. And, my dad went to embassies for multiple countries, Western European primarily, to try to get a visa for us to, come there as political refugees. And he was turned down at all of those. And he didn't think it would even be possible to come to the United States. I mean, the United States was very much kind of looked up to and, almost revered in Poland at the time, especially under communism. So when he went there, it was really almost out of desperation, but thinking that there was no way that this could happen. But he went there and the U.S. had very kind of pro-immigrant policies at the time and issued us a visa, which we were ecstatic about. And, so I think that for me and for my family has always been a big motivation, kind of, this country and this community, gave us so much, gave us so many opportunities, and allowed us to realize so many dreams, things that would certainly not have been possible. I still visit my peers in Poland, and there's still, the scars of kind of communist rule are very much still there. The opportunities are not there. The economy is still very much years behind, decades behind, where it probably should be. So for my family now, I felt the need to give back and contribute to this country and to this community because of all the opportunities, that and all the things that we'd always been provided.
It's wonderful. I just want to pause just for a quick moment. Councilmember Corey Wolbach has just joined us. This is Agent Max Nielepko. He's from the Palo Alto Police Department. He is part of our speaker series on the immigrant experience, talking about his family's experience immigrating from Poland, first to the San Francisco area and then to Palo Alto. So are there some additional questions or comments for Agent Max?
I do have a final comment on that. What do you think, as a community, as a city, how do we do better to reach out to immigrants, especially those in silos? Do you have an idea to help us?
So that's a tough question again because my family
It's
wasn't so much involved in that community. But I in speaking with my parents before coming here, and I asked kind of a list of questions, and among them was what really worked well in this community,
That's
and what
right.
did the city do well, and is there anything the city could have improved upon or done differently? When we were talking about the things that the city did well, I mean, they talked to me for 10 minutes, going down a list of different things that they've loved and continue to love. They still live in town that they love about this city. When I got to, what could be improved, I literally got a pause and silence. So, I mean, I think from our experience, I don't want to just paint a very rosy picture. I'm sure you've heard from others, or you will hear from others who maybe have very different perspectives and, experiences that they've had. But I can genuinely tell you that, from my family's perspective, and certainly from my perspective, I thought that the city has been fantastic, and both kind of from the perspective of administratively and the city functions, but even more so, the folks in this community really went above and beyond, to reach out to us and to get to know us, and I think as long as you're receptive to that and you're willing to participate and kind of take a little bit of maybe risk and get to know people, the rewards are tremendous. So our experiences have been fantastic, and we're very, very thankful.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Commissioner Stinger, did you also have another question or comment?
I just had a comment. I just wanted to thank you. I thought your words were really motivating. I felt the same way listening to you as when I've traveled and I come back through immigration and the immigration officer says, "Welcome home." I just take that with real pride, and I really am motivated by your story, and I hope we can duplicate it for someone else.
Well, trust me, I'm doing my best out there every day, serving the community, trying to do the same. So thank you for your work, and we'll keep doing this as a team.
And I also had one more question, although Commissioner, anyone else? My final question would be, we've talked somewhat about coming from a different country or speaking a different language. But one thing we didn't touch on were class differences, which have also become kind of an issue in Palo Alto. This is an affluent community, and as you've talked, your family was very poor when you first came here, and you were living in subsidized housing provided by Palo Alto Housing Corp. And I'm wondering, did you experience anyone looking down on you, or were you ever made to feel bad about yourself because you weren't, a Silicon Valley millionaire family? Did you, those class differences can be a bit subtle.
Sure.
Did you ever feel that way about Palo Alto?
Yeah, certainly, I think you become more conscious of those things probably in, middle school or high school. So, there's certainly times when I'd play on a sports team and, everyone was getting a particular type of shoe or something and we just couldn't afford it. I became aware of those things, but at the same time, I think in a way those experiences made me stronger because, I think it's sometimes good not to get everything you want. So, it's something that I think has served me well, and I try to kind of instill that in my children as well a little bit.
And the one that's coming.
That's right. And then, I think, the only thing was kind of what I touched on with, kind of the scholarships and things like that, sometimes it was difficult for us to, for my parents to get the kids involved in some things because it was just cost prohibitive. And I'm not sure what could really be done about that. We just kind of had to pick and choose what, we wanted to do and kind of rely on the generosity of some of the, leagues and organizations and, camps in town to assist us financially. And again, that's where I kind of really say that people in the community really go above and beyond here, and they're so generous because, there were many times that either the organization would just sponsor myself or my sisters to attend a camp or go to Hidden Villa or, kind of whatever it was. But also, there were certainly times when individuals would say, we're going to take care of you, So I think that was really the only noticeable, I guess, time when I felt, like there was something I was conscious about. It was those experiences. But again, I don't think really in the big picture, in the long run, that those were necessarily overwhelmingly negative for me. I think, in fact, they kind of built some character. So, I can't say it's something that was really a bad experience.
Yeah, I'd definitely say as a police agent, you must have some character from all those experiences. Vice Chair Stone?
Yeah, kind of going in a similar vein to that question. As a police officer, I know you can't speak for other officers on the force, but how do you think your perspective has been changed? As not only as nearly a lifetime resident of the city, but also having a different from a different class of the city, and with your immigration perspective, how do you think that's changed your perspective from other officers on the force?
I mean, I think for me, it really helps to connect with people on a deeper level. It's not just kind of a call for service where you have to, do a certain job. I know I certainly always connect when someone is from a foreign country or has, lived abroad, and that's kind of a place where I often find common ground. We have people that have come here to this community from so many places, and people that are so well traveled, and I think I've probably at this point traveled to like 25 or 30 countries, and over my life I lived in 5. So I find like it's easy for me to find common ground with people because we do have such a diverse community. So I think that's kind of an area where, maybe it just helps me build a better rapport with someone right away. And I mean, that's huge, because that can lead to a better contact and a better relationship, even just on a quick street contact if we're doing something. But certainly in some of the more involved and complex investigations I've had to work on, because I've actually been a sexual assault detective for the last 5 years, you get to know people pretty well. And I think that, building rapport and trust is very important. And it kind of gives me that common ground with a lot of folks. So I think it's certainly made me stronger professionally.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a question or comment? Or Councilmember Walbach, did you have anything you wanted to ask? All right, well, thank you so much, Agent Max.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's a pleasure. It's an honor.
And please tell your parents thank you as well. We really
I
appreciated
will.
hearing their
And
story.
on behalf of my whole family, thank you to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And good luck with baby number 4.
Thank you very much. I'll need it.
All right, well, I feel very inspired to live in Palo Alto now. It was a wonderful presentation. Good night.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to move on to our next topic, which is update and discussion on topics for future HRC community forums. We are kind of on a roll these days. We've had a number of very, very successful forums, and we're going to debrief a little bit later on the most recent one, which was on implicit bias. But I'd like to make sure we keep that momentum going, and as we're now into April, if we're going to do other events this year, we've really got to get them organized and calendared. So I would like to do an event on mental health at some time later this year. Probably it couldn't be any sooner than the fall time frame. I've kind of broached the topic a bit with Minka And since she's not here, I'll probably take advantage of that and just pretend that she agreed to do a whole bunch of stuff for me. But I think mental health is a really important issue for our community for many reasons. One, it is one of those hidden topics that people are sometimes very reluctant to talk about. Immigrant communities are also sometimes very uncomfortable with speaking out about mental health issues. And we are a community that has been very impacted by the teen suicide clusters, and that's been the most obvious public expression of mental health problems. But issues like depression, anxiety, more serious illnesses like schizophrenia, they have no respect for gender, class, ethnicity, religion, language. They affect all of us. They affect all levels and all peoples and all families. And I really think it would be a good area for us as the HRC to take the lead on and maybe partner with some of our local health providers to do an awareness event and make sure that people, especially people in communities that maybe don't know or don't talk about these type of issues, find out that there are resources, that they can be safe and that they can have privacy, but that they can still get the help that they need. So I'd like to work with Minka on that later this year, and if any of you would like to participate in any aspect of it, whether you want to maybe help with some planning or helping to arrange some speakers or helping with signage, publicity, or whatever, I know that Minka and I would really welcome the help. So we'll probably start defining that task, and mental health is a broad topic, so we may have to kind of come up with something that's a little more focused, maybe either in the form of a question or the form of the way that it impacts our community. Because I think that we've had a lot of discussion about the teen suicides, and while that's still an ongoing, very pressing issue, I want this to be a broader event. You know, we've also had senior suicides, and that's something that people don't even know about in this community. You know, we've had people act out psychotic episodes. There was a man who burned down the Walgreens, you know, because he was mentally ill in our community. And there are things that we don't always connect. We sometimes think of them as crimes or outrageous behavior. But we don't always understand the mental illness underlying some of that behavior. So I really think it's time for us to kind of as a community take a broader look at that and make sure that people understand, you know, what mental illness is and that it's something we don't have to stigmatize anymore. So that's something that I would like to put on the table. And then another thing, and I mentioned this briefly at our last meeting, is that I've had a couple conversations with some colleagues at the Mountain View HRC, and they might be interested in partnering with us on some kind of event. And again, that would be a longer lead time, but it might be fun to kind of share the load, you know, with another group that's also very community-oriented as we are, and our neighboring communities have a great deal in common. And so in that case, maybe we want to do something that's maybe more on the positive side, because we've been focusing a lot on serious issues lately, but maybe we could even have a more of a celebratory type event and partner with Mountain View on that. So that's an option. But again, if we wanted to do that, we'd have to kind of think of some things that we might want to focus on and then do some, you know, reaching out to our colleagues and see if they're interested, and then start to calendar some of these ideas, because they're all going to require months of lead time, so we can't let it go too long. But I'd love to also hear from any of you if you'd like to jump in. Now, you two have both just done events, and you're probably going to be exhausted for another year. But but I don't know if anyone else has something they're passionate about that they'd like to work on. It doesn't have to be, you know, we've been doing some pretty full-blown events lately. If there's something we want to do that's maybe a little quieter or a more targeted event, you know, I think we're wide open with what we want to do. Unlike our colleagues in Mountain View, we're not tied to the roundtable format that they have, which is a wonderful format, but it is a bit constraining because they have to come up with an issue and then find people on various sides of a kind of contentious issue and do that format every time. So we can do broader events, more focused events, larger events, smaller events. But I would like us to keep this momentum going that we have when reaching out to the community. Because I think that we're finding our voice, and I think that we're also being a voice for the community when we do that.
Well,
I had a
Go ahead.
Well, thank you for that suggestion. I think that's a great idea. I mean, it is a broad area, and I know that my husband and I were involved with NAMI for a while because I have a stepson who's bipolar, so they're certainly very active and they're a good lobby. I did meet with one of the members of the community who some of you know, her parents own Evia, Mary Jane Marcus, and she's a real social activist here. And one of her thoughts about how the HRC could make an impact is to do something with renters. She says, I know this is something that we're all aware of, but she says renters are really being hit hard in our community. She told me about somebody whose rent was raised $500 a month. I mean, really staggering, things like that, and they have to move. And, it's one of those, again, sort of hidden things in our community that we hear about, but we're not really in touch with directly. So I don't know if that's a potential kind of event, but I think that would draw a lot of people. I do feel like the HRC represents the vulnerable populations in our community, so it's not always great news. So I do think that we have a role to play there. And then the other thing that came out of the conversation was, what if we did smaller events? So rather than doing these major events, which take a lot of production and resources, maybe there's smaller roundtables that we could do in one of the smaller rooms, like the El Matador, one of the smaller rooms at Mitchell Park. So I don't know if that would involve the same number of resources, but maybe that means we could do things more frequently and it'd be a little more, maybe involve a little less planning. I don't know, but that was something that came up that I thought was interesting.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that one thing, I'll let you speak next, Commissioner Chen,
right.
that Commissioner Al-Hassani and I had talked about at one point was he has amazing social media skills, and some of our partner agencies in the community don't really know how to use social media that effectively. Since he did not attend the meeting tonight, I may take advantage of that situation and try to sign him up to do maybe a fair, kind of like a fair where he could help attendees who would only be his rep agencies or some other local nonprofits, and maybe give them a quick, Twitter lesson, Facebook lesson. I don't know. That could be something really fun and really help them out in terms of getting their own messaging to a wider community. So something like that might be very well attended, but it would be a smaller, very targeted event. If someone like Commissioner Al-Hassani would have the time and interest to do that. Now, honestly, I don't know that he does. But if we do have a skill set or something that we could share, particularly with our nonprofits, I think often they're short-staffed and they don't always have a chance to learn some of these skills. And if we can impart anything that we have to them or help connect them to a resource that can help them expand their skill set, that might be a very welcome opportunity for them. Okay, so Commissioner Chen, you had some ideas.
Yes, not really an idea. I just dropped by the mail that Commissioner Stinger sent us regarding to demographic changes in Palo Alto, and then this is a very good topic to talk about, because today, 10 years ago, comparing to the population changes, we are more diversified, had a lot more immigrants, and then it could be a good topic to talk about, get people involved, like breaking the silo, how to do that, etc. It's going to be hard to do, but it's an area that we need to think about.
Yeah, we every year now we have a festival called World Music Day, which was started by a former HRC commissioner. And that has become a really popular event. And part of that was to celebrate the diversity of music from all around the world. I just wonder if maybe we could do something sort of analogous, have a kind of diversity day where we celebrate the wonderful diversity that we do have here in Palo Alto. Yeah. So we do have that role model. Somebody has an idea and they take it and turn it into a reality. And now it is a well-established tradition here in Palo Alto. It's every Father's Day now for the last maybe 7 to 10 years, I think now it's been going on. I've volunteered for it a couple times, and it's an amazing event. So, maybe we could start a trend and do our own, community festival, which might be a lot of fun. So yeah, I really like that idea too.
Yeah, my feeling is the music day is rather limited to the musicians, the kind of music. It's not that people, like some people, I'm not interested in music, they wouldn't attend. We like to have something that everybody's interested in, and then going, like whatever, like Ms. Saunders, who talked about in last month's meeting, she said the community events, so everyone could participate, and we need to find something that is fun for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Commissioner Singh?
I have some responses to everything. I feel like There's nothing here I don't like. I feel like a kid in an ice cream shop. All these flavors have some appeal because they're all important. I was thinking about the Mental Health Day. I know the Y is beginning to look at their health summit in the fall, and this might be a time to look at to make sure that we are doing something that's different, but maybe there's a way to also collaborate and partner with them to make it efficient for the community and productive. I really like the idea of partnering and celebrating some of the positive contributions that different groups make in the community, and that would be a really exciting thing. And I was fascinated by your suggestion on the renters, particularly in this regard. If we did a small session with renters, more like a focus group, to learn from the renters rather than present, not having a mission of awareness or problem solving, but learning what the situation, doing a situation analysis, doing a problem identification. That might, if we could do that prior to our retreat, it might give us some guidance to set our priorities for the next calendar year. And there might be other groups in that same vein that we'd like to just get to know better. And so it would be a different format than the forums we've been doing. I guess then the only thing new that I might add to it is, following the implicit bias forum, we've had a lot of people comment and make suggestions, and there will be some next steps coming out of that to carry that forward. But we haven't crystallized those yet.
Thank you. Yes, I too was a renter here for many years before I finally was able to buy a small place, and I attended many of the Our Palo Alto events a couple of years ago, and there was a lot of talk from renters at that time about the lack of affordable housing and the skyrocketing rents. My concern there for the HRC entering that area again is just that there's so little that I think we could actually do about the situation. I'm a little reluctant to kind of stir up a topic and then have to tell people we really, as a volunteer commission, don't have a whole lot that we can offer you. And because that's what our Palo Alto events kind of turned into after a while, was people were literally sobbing and talking about being thrown out of their apartments and having nowhere to go, and there was just nothing that we could do for them. So I would like all of our events to somehow have that shred of hope for people, that they're either connected to resources that might be able to help them, or they learn about places that they can go for help, like we did with domestic violence, as we talked about with implicit bias and some of our other events. So I'm just a little concerned about, as I said, kind of stirring up a hornet's nest around this very, very touchy topic, and then having to say to people, but there isn't a whole lot we can do for you right now except hear your stories and appreciate that you've shared them with us. So if we can think of a way to tie this to something that would empower people or educate them or help them in some way, I think then it would be something that we should consider taking on. But we do just have to be aware of the limits of what we can do as a commission in this community, and housing is just a very difficult topic right now. Commissioner Greer, Vice Chair Stone.
I know we're all excited with, I think, the success we've had over the past year with our groups. I do want to, caution us to not get overambitious and sort of dilute the newfound prominence we've had in the community by trying to do a little too much. I think we've done a good job over the past couple of years focusing on issues and tackling some very important issues, and doing 2 or 3 large events that we do very well. I think we should continue with that model since it's working, and we haven't been using it for too long. So I love the idea about an event sometime in the fall on mental health, and then maybe throw in a couple of smaller events. But I think to now jump off into other areas where I agree with Sharon Ann, we probably won't, unfortunately, be able to have much. I don't want to say we won't have success on it, but yeah, we don't. I think people look people don't have a very good understanding of what our commission does, let alone has the capability of doing. And I do worry, even though that is probably one of the most pressing issues our city faces right now. I don't know if our commission is the one to tackle it. So I think we should focus in a little more on the success we've been having. I love the idea about trying to do some event and mirror the success that Claude had, which has been for the World Music Day. And I think an event that celebrates the diversity of Palo Alto through a combination of music and food and dancing and all that could be very successful and a lot of fun. And I think that is the type of event that we could pull off pretty well, and maybe create a tradition like he did, like Claude was able to do with the World Music Day. So.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I have thought we could leverage some of Claude Ezrin's model for World Music Day if we did a diversity-focused event. And we also had some really interesting insights from Samina Sundas, who spoke to us a couple of months ago, because she's doing a Know Your Neighbor Day. And a lot of that is helping people meet the American Muslim community, but it could be easily expanded to cover many, many of the groups here. The Indo-American community here is also, they did is it pronounced Holi Festival or Holi Festival?
Holi Festival.
Holi Festival, which was fascinating and wonderful. So I think some of the groups that live here are already stepping out and saying, here, I want to introduce my culture, I want to share with you where I come from. So maybe it's just a question of us kind of harnessing all these resources and bringing them all together, and making it a citywide event that everybody's invited to. And we might even get the Eastern European community to come out and join us, and try to get over some of these cultural and language barriers that keep people isolated from each other. I think that would be awesome. So let's keep all that in mind. But if you're interested in working on anything, let me and let Minka know, because as I said, we do have to start the planning. We can't just keep kind of kicking around ideas. We've got to get some things on the calendar and really start working on them if we're going to pull them off in a timely fashion. So I'll be working with Minka on the mental health event. And as I said, we would welcome anybody who's got ideas, suggestions, or who would like to kind of be a co-lead or a helper bee, even just for short term or for a specific task. We'd definitely welcome that. I think we need to get our arms around that event a little bit more. But we'll have an update, I think, next time for you, as I'll work with Minka on that when she gets back from her break. So does anybody else have any other comments, concerns,
I have one
questions?
more comment. But sometimes I wonder, what are the roles of HRC in this kind of things? Because we are not actually a city employee, we cannot do a lot of things. And then even though I started, I had the experience. I had called a meeting, people decided to do, and the ones carry on whatever we have decided. So that is the problem. So we have to define clearly what are the accountability, who is doing what, and how can we help. Sometimes I would feel I was pretty lonely in terms of what I was doing because I had no help. I don't know where to look for help. Maybe that's my problem. But I think for such an event, we need to know exactly what good planning, exactly where to look for resources, how to get help.
Well, I think that's a really good point, Commissioner Chen. And I think that's why we may want to, one, reach out to our colleagues on the Mountain View HRC and share, as I said, share some of that load, some of that responsibility for the planning. And we would also have to work closely with city staff, and not just with Minka, but probably multiple departments. If we were going to take over, say, one of the parks or a community center to hold this big event, that's a big deal, and we'd have to have to reach out to city council members and city leaders and neighborhood association leaders. It would be a lot of work, and we would have to share that. Definitely, that could not fall on just one person, and we certainly couldn't dump it all on Minka. Although she's not here tonight, and once again, no. But you're right. But you're right, and we are a volunteer commission with. I know, and Councilmember Walbach will never miss another meeting because he'll be scared what we'll sign him up for. But we do that. Making sure that the load is distributed and that we don't overburden staff, but that we too recognize that we're a volunteer commission and we all have lives of our own, and there is only so much we can do. So we might only pull off one big ambitious event a year because it's just too exhausting. But I think it's good sometimes to be a little bit ambitious and to push ourselves a bit. And my feeling is with enough planning and with enough people volunteering to help, we could pull it off. I mean, World Music Day has just become this international event, and it was just a much smaller thing, that was started several years ago here in Palo Alto. So things can grow and take on a life of their own too if there's enough support and enough people. So I think we should think about it. And maybe we can even reach out to the county and see if some North County folks might want to help out with that, with an event too. Yeah. All right, so we'll keep all that in mind. I'll talk to Minka. And as I said, let us know who's interested maybe in doing what. And as these things become kind of set in stone as far as a date and a place, then I think we'll start figuring out tasks and activities and see who might want to pitch in and do what. And we'll move forward. All right, so thank you guys for your comments and suggestions. I really appreciate that. All right, let us move on then to a review of our most recent spectacularly successful event, which was Commissioner Stinger's being different together, implicit bias event. I just thought it was very well attended. Really appreciated the participation of Council Members Wolbach and Berman, who were so kind to kind of open and close that event for us. The panelists were wonderful, and with that, I will quit talking and let my colleague kind of give us her thoughts and share her perspectives on that.
Well, first of all, I also echo my thank you to both you and Councilman Berman, and to a lot of people. Pastor Smith, who moderated, our keynote speaker, the panelists, I owe them a huge debt of thanks. I think we all got so much more out of their contribution than could have imagined. I sort of divided my thinking into three areas. One was lessons I learned from logistics that might be useful to share as we think about going forward. I was very fortunate to have a subcommittee, a planning committee, work with me, and that had members of the community as well as Commissioner Gordon and I and city staff. And that helped spread the work, but it also was more fun. It gave me more ideas. It gave us access to more people. And I think that might be something we'd want to consider for other forums, to have that planning group. PR. Commissioner Gordon, when you first approached me maybe 60 days before the event, I thought, whoa, that's way early. But it wasn't, in terms of getting ready and thinking about how we wanted to prepare our statements and the target audiences we had and how we were going to approach them. So scheduling that was a logistical, was important logistically. And the other lesson I learned was to challenge everything, and that was basically a lesson I learned from Minka. Every sentence we put on the table, she challenged, and that made the event so much stronger because we went through a lot of scenarios around a desk, in her office, and solved a lot of issues there that could have been hurdles going forward. Going forward, I think I suggested that there will be next steps coming out of this. I've had a number of people approach me, and using one of our panelists' statements, Jade Chow said, use the other organizations in the community as platforms. You don't need to reinvent everything. And a number of organizations have come forward and said they'd like to partner on future events. And we're going to put an ad hoc subcommittee together. And I volunteered you.
Thanks for letting me know.
But we could still, within the dictates of protocol, have another commissioner join us and help sort through and prioritize the ideas that are on the table. So I'd like to leave that as an open suggestion for preparing to come back to the commission next month with some ideas. I have so many things I want to say, but I could just, it would take me 2 hours to go through all the important comments we heard. We just heard so many lovely words: cultural humility, listen, make mistakes, just a lot of good lessons about how we interact with the people in our community. And I think everybody left feeling like they'd learned something important. So I'll turn it over to the commission.
Well, I agree. I really enjoyed the event. I enjoyed the panelists. I saw so many people nodding in agreement, when the speakers were talking. Even little kids who were there were fascinated by some of the things that they saw and heard. And I really also liked the phrase cultural humility. That's going to stay with me, I think, for a long, long time. Do anyone else here want to share his or her perspective on having attended that event? Vice Chair Stone?
Yeah, well, first of all, I congratulated you at the event, and I congratulate you now. It was absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
Wonderful. The speakers that were there were all inspiring. I truly loved it, not just as a member of the commission, but as just an observer. It was such a great event, and I know someone commented on this at the event, but I don't think I've ever been to anything in Palo Alto that was so. I mean, we're a diverse community, but I don't think there's ever been a room that I've been in that was as diverse as that room, and that was pretty incredible. Seeing all the different people in there from all walks of life, from everywhere, and age groups, nationalities, religion, you name it. I think we had it, and so that was pretty cool, and so it was fun. And I mean, I bragged about it afterwards too. My girlfriend's she's Mexican and she lives in Union City, and she always jokes around with me that I'm on this commission trying to fight for diversity. She goes, "Oh, Palo Alto, you guys aren't diverse at all." And I told her afterwards, I said, "You should have seen that. We are a diverse community, and I'm very proud of it." So I thought it was just great, fantastic, well done. It was definitely one of the proudest I've ever been serving on this commission was sitting at that event that night. So well done.
Thank you. That makes me really pleased.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. That was very good forum that I was in. I learned something myself, amazingly. All those panelists gave us in-depth information about implicit bias that could have happened to me. So I learned a lesson from it, and also I learned how diverse the community is. By Jay Chow was talking about the cornerstone that her project is, and how many different kind of nationality, what languages. I was amazed. So thank you for the opportunity for us to learn and then to get involved.
You're welcome. Thank you for your
I
comments.
thought that what was very useful to me was to bring it down to the personal level. It wasn't, broad demographics or lots of statistics. It was down to the conversation. I thought that was really productive. And I'm trying to remember the term that Dr. Brown used, microaggression, yeah. So things that I'm not aware of, but now it's like things are like popping up everywhere. I'm seeing it. There's actually an application for implicit bias. I don't know if people know this. It's like a new phone app, that if you are in an interview, and sometimes the woman who was interviewed was African American, and she was applying for a software engineering position. She had an MBA from Stanford, and not computer science, but she had an engineering degree from Stanford, and they said she wasn't qualified, and she said she knew it was because she was African American, and so she developed this app which basically deletes all the names. It's just like that story about the orchestra auditions, and it's a similar idea. So things like that are popping up, and it's called implicit bias. I just thought that was uncanny. Anyway, I'm seeing it in other places. There's an organization I found out about called Civity. I don't know if you know about them. I mean, we could talk offline about it, but they train people in having conversations with people of differing points of view, and it's all about that, implicit bias. So it's popping up. So you unearth something that, I mean, we all know that this exists, but there's now many opportunities is what I've seen. So.
Councilmember Walbach, please share.
I was just going to say, first, thank you for taking time to confer and offer, sit down and just chat with myself and Councilmember Berman prior to the event, several days in advance of the event, so we could hear your thoughts about the logistics, especially since we were going to be speaking at the very beginning and the very end, and also about the content. I thought that was very useful just as a logistical note for future events. I don't know if you had an opportunity to do that with the moderator or all the panelists, but I think probably speaking for Councilmember Berman and certainly for myself, having the chance to speak with the organizer in advance was very useful. So thank you for that. And also, I just want to say, thanks for having the chance to make the closing statements. Hopefully I did all right, and I know Councilmember Berman was thrilled to have the chance to make opening comments as well. So we really appreciate that opportunity. And again, as everybody else has said, well done to everybody who participated, but especially to Valerie.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Councilmember Wilbach. Again, we're very grateful for your support and for your participation in that event. All right, well, this was quite a great event, and we are so proud of Commissioner Stinger. Our two newbie commissioners have both done an excellent job pulling off these events. They're a great team, so thank you both. And and if you want to jump in on any other future events,
I do.
please let us know. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to our next item on the agenda. So this is something that the three veterans here are familiar with, but I think that our two newer commissioners probably are not. We are, of course, chartered with overseeing the grant process to the Human Services Resource Allocation Program, popularly known as HSRAP. We recommend allocations which then go to council, and council can then either take our recommendations or reject them or change them in some way. But this is one of our key responsibilities on behalf of council. So what we'd like to do every year or two is visit our agencies. This is not an audit. This is not checking up on them. This is a chance to go and educate ourselves more about what the agencies do. And then when we review their grant applications, we have a better sense of what the needs are and what's going on. And I think it really helps us to become more informed and make better choices when we make our funding recommendations to council. Also, if we become aware of serious service gaps, that's something that we can also raise to council when those allocations come up. So staff has put together two lists for us. So it looks like one is an old list from some time ago.
Last year's, just in case people didn't remember where they went.
Okay, and then this year, though, so one issue I see is that Avenidas and Palo Alto Community Child Care should be off the list, right?
Sorry, I just read it.
Yeah, so they should be, the first two listed, Avenidas and Palo Alto Community Child Care, are no longer part of the HSRAP program. They are they have independent contracts now, so they have their own funding. So of the remaining list here, these are the agencies that are currently funded through HSRAP. And what I would encourage people to do is visit an agency or two. If everyone could maybe try to commit to doing two over the next few months. These would have to be completed, I think, before the fall, because then we will get into the budget cycle where we will be reviewing the HSRAP applications, and it wouldn't be appropriate for us to go doing site visits while the funding process is underway. So if you are interested in visiting an agency, what you can do is sign up to be the lead commissioner, and Minka can help provide the contact information. What you typically do is email that person and say, hey, I'm on the Human Relations Commission. We'd like to just come by and learn more about your agency. And many of the agencies now over the past few years have been doing that regularly for commissioners. So they probably will understand your request. And then you may go maybe with a couple of colleagues. Remember, under the Brown Act, up to 3 people could go to visit that agency. And I said this is just to educate ourselves and become more informed. I've visited several of the agencies over the years, so I'll probably target some of the ones that I haven't had a chance to get to know yet. If there's an agency that's just of particular interest, then please feel free to either jump on board either as the lead commissioner or as one of the other commissioners. If you're not the lead, though, you will have less input probably into the date and the time of the visit. And it may be that you'll have to sort of piggyback on the arrangements that someone else has made. So if your schedule's tight or you have limited availability, you might want to go ahead and sign up to be the lead and make your own arrangements. The other thing I would ask is that we not have multiple groups all go to the same agency, because that gets to be a bit much for them. So if there's, a group going, say, to visit Envision, which is now called Life Moves, I think, it has a new name, then probably, one group should go and not burden them with being tour guides kind of through the agency on multiple occasions. So I don't think we have to figure this out now, but take this sheet home and perhaps identify for yourself if there were 2 or 3 or even more agencies that you'd like to visit.
We have a copy. We don't have a copy.
Oh, you only give them to me? Oh.
I just have people who maybe would have signed up.
Oh, sign up tonight. Okay. All right. Well, then why don't you go ahead? I'll pass this along. I'm sorry. I thought we all had this at places, and I'm talking like everybody knows what I'm doing, but you don't. I'll pass this around. Why don't you put your name under either lead commissioner or if you want to be a tag-along. You don't have to be committed to anything right now. This is just to get a sense of who might want to do what. And then once we have that sense, whoever wants to be the lead can start reaching out and making arrangements. And it could be in the near term or in the farther out term. But I think we do have to wrap up before the fall, before the RFP process starts. I'll check with Minka on that.
Well, what is the process once you go there? I know you make arrangements with somebody. Is there an expectation of how long to stay? Do we have questions we bring? What's the...
No, well, typically we get kind of a tour guide because the agencies often show people around. They show potential donors, they show board members. They have some of them have visitors fairly regularly. So they typically show us their facility. Sometimes, for example, at Envision, we met some of the clients who were there. We saw some of the shelters that they run. We literally piled into a van and drove from site to site to site because Envision had multiple places that they wanted us to see that were all under their management. Other agencies are very small. I've been to the Mayview Clinic, for example, and it's kind of the waiting room. There's maybe an exam room and there's a lab and there's not a whole lot else. It's a small facility, but we talked a lot with the CEO at the time who talked about the mission, the clientele, the demographics of who they serve. We learned a lot about the clinic. It's been there since the 70s, so it's deeply entrenched in the community, but its work has changed over the years because as we've been discussing, Palo Alto has changed and different types of people have come into the community, and even people who maybe in the past were able to get care at PAM for one of the other providers, some of them can no longer afford to go there. And so they're now turning up at the clinic because it's a lower cost clinic. And some of these folks have chronic conditions like asthma or diabetes, and they have nowhere to go to get care. So it's very, very informative and interesting to go and find out what's happening in the community. And these folks are right on the front lines. They are directly serving people in need. So you learn a lot when you go. So yeah, it's a good question. But, I think we spent several hours when we were at Envision because we did see multiple facilities, but some of the visits can be much quicker. And you can set some boundaries around that. If you have limited time, you can say, I'm going to come by, I've only got an hour, I'd love to just tour the facility and ask some questions. And the questions often arise after you've been there, after you've seen.
Sure.
I don't typically prepare questions before I go, but based on what they tell me and then what I see, I always have tons of questions. So but that's me. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pass this on. Yes.
As part of the HISRAP process, do we have a binder with like mission statements, functions? Is there anything that we should read and prep so that we're not asking redundant questions?
No, I don't think we have a binder like that. And no, I don't think it would be redundant. Mission statements are sometimes not all that illuminating, frankly. I mean, sometimes they're kind of broad.
Just an example.
Yeah, but a lot of times you can read that a facility houses families in need, and so you know what they do. But when you go and you meet the kids, playing in the playground, and you talk to the mom who's trying to find a job because she's trying to support 3 kids by herself, and we were taken into the room of, to the apartment of one of the families. They gave permission, and just seeing how they had a bed and a chair and a table, and that was kind of it. I think the mom had basically fled an abusive situation, and this was a safe place that she found for herself and her children. That's all they had. And then we saw volunteers from the Palo Alto Women's Club come, and they basically did this massive I don't know, clothing drive or something, and they were just dropping off bags of clothes. I mean, they had somehow rounded up tons of clothing for the children so that when they went to school, they would have things to wear. I mean, it was just this incredible coming together of the community, but you could read about that and yet never fully appreciate it until you actually went there and saw people. So it's a very, very good experience. I mean, I've always come away just shaking my head in amazement at what our partner agencies do. Now, I think do you guys know what all the agencies do? Should I run through that quickly so you'll know a little bit better what are you familiar with them all? I think there's like 16 of them.
All 16 now? You want to do
Okay, I'll just
Maybe
go.
we could just check the website.
Well, just say Abilities United is a countywide agency that serves a lot of Palo Altans and particularly children with developmental delays, but it goes all the way up into adults. They work a lot with, say, autistic adults who also need job training and so forth. We have Adolescent Counseling Service, which is in our schools, which helps teenagers with all kinds of mental health issues. We have Community Technology Alliance. They run the program, the software that's required to track, say, homeless people throughout the county. And they do a lot of other interesting things. Downtown Streets Team, I'm sure you're all very familiar with, and it's famous. They clean the streets here, and they help people transition from homelessness into employment. Dreamcatchers, one of our newer agencies, helps underprivileged children in the schools. It was started by a Stanford undergraduate who's now a PhD candidate, an amazing, amazing woman. Life Moves is the new name of Envision Shelter Network, which I know you all know, that helps the unhoused here. La Comida is the great subsidized lunch program for seniors in the community. Mayview Clinic was the clinic I was just talking about. That is a low-cost clinic for the community. Momentum for Mental Health also works with mostly the unhoused on the mental health side. Palo Alto Housing Corp. subsidized housing for people in need here in the community. Peninsula Healthcare Connection works closely with Life Moves, formerly Envision, to provide mental and physical health care for people who come into that facility. The Senior Adults Legal Assistance provides all kinds of legal counseling for seniors throughout the county, but also here in Palo Alto. And Vista Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired is a very old agency. I think goes back to the 1930s, and does a lot of work with Palo Altans who are losing their vision. Not even all seniors, but many younger people too, due to glaucoma from diabetes, are now losing their vision at an earlier and earlier age. They're a wonderful organization. And Youth Community Service, famous in Palo Alto for providing all kinds of community service opportunities for young people. So that's just a quick summary of what they do.
Great.
And I know, and I'm being taped. I'm going to see a verbatim transcript of that description, so I hope I got everything right. So yeah, they're just all wonderful agencies, and I think that whichever ones you visit, you'll learn a lot. So as I said, if everybody can maybe think of 2 that they might want to visit, go ahead and sign up. And if you don't feel like you can commit now, we can circle around with Minka and Mary later on. But I just wanted to put that one out there. All right, so any questions or comments on that? All right, then let's move on to kind of our final chapter. So first, I wanted to talk briefly about giving reports here in the report section of our meeting. So we do commissioner reports, and at that time, commissioners are just welcome to speak up on anything that they've done, an event that they've attended, someone they met with, for example, that pertains to their human relations work. But we'd like to ask that you keep your remarks brief, maybe to a minute or 2, and then kind of move on. Now let someone else give a report or move on to Minka's report, because we do feel like some of them are getting a bit long and detailed, and since the rest of us weren't there, it can be a little bit exhausting to listen to, a long debrief on some of these events. So if you have a commissioner report, really urge you to share it, but to share it succinctly. And if it's something that you want to talk more about, or if you want to, have a discussion around something you learned, then let's put it on the agenda and make it an agenda item for next time. All right, and with that, does anyone have, if you're not too scared, does anyone have a commissioner report
I was good.
that they would like to share?
Yeah, I'll pass this way. And yes, I do have a commissioner report.
Okay, then please go ahead, Commissioner Stinger.
This is actually in the category of a spin-off of the Implicit Bias Forum. Kiwanis Speaker Series is sponsoring 2 events with the CEO of the Islamic Networking Group. One is a program on Thursday, April 21st, and the other is a program on Wednesday, May 11th. It's a chance to, the purpose of these social cultural events is to help us to start to achieve a higher level of cultural understanding with our Muslim neighbors. So it's a great opportunity to have a community participation group in the sense of a conversation that we talked about at the forum, and specifically to learn about a group in our community. So I'll share this with anybody who's interested.
All right, let's pass that around. Does anyone else have a commissioner report that they'd like to share?
I do.
Vice Chair Stone?
Do you want to start the Jeopardy music to make sure it? Well, it was actually, I think the day after the implicit bias event, I got stopped by a young man, a teenager on the streets of San Francisco, asking for donations for their group called Hip Hop for Change, and I asked him about it, and he explained what this group does, and basically what they do is they're trying to combat not only racism within their community, but also this notion of rap music and hip hop, and trying to fight, I guess, some of the older, an older generation's thought process and biased views against it. But they're really trying to use hip hop as a way to inspire young people to rethink their notions about race. And it seems like a great group, and they've been they're pretty new. And I gave him my information and told him to have the director reach out to me, and maybe they could come and talk to our commission. I have not heard back from them. I haven't heard back from them, but I think it's something that leadership we can discuss, and maybe look out and reach out to them, and maybe have this group, if they're in line with kind of what we've been discussing, come out to talk to us, because I think it sounds very unique, and sounds kind of like a new fun approach to this very deeper conversation we've been having. And who knows, maybe be able to have them actually perform if we end up coming up with an event later in the year, be able to have them perform at something like that.
Oh, they should definitely be at World Music Day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Really?
Yeah.
So this doesn't give much information, but I could pass it around. This is what he gave me.
Great, thank you. All right, are there any other commissioner reports?
I had a report, very short, 30 seconds.
You have to turn on your microphone.
I went into this event called You Speak Out. It's an exhibit at the Art Center, and there's a opening reception on March 25th. And I was there a little late, but I saw performances, especially by a young lady from Gun High School. Her name is called Ronnie, and who had a ukulele sing-along. It was very impressive. And there was another man, a boy, who had written a poem and then recited that was very impressive. So I think this is a good chance for them to express themselves and then be accepted to the community, what they are, who they are. So I think this is a very good chance that, thanks for City of Palo Alto had this occasion, build up for people to do that.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Chen. Do you mind sharing that around? All right. Anyone else have a commissioner report? All right, great. Then let's move on. And does our council liaison have a report?
Yeah, a couple things. One, Finance Committee heard, and I believe we accepted the Community Development Block Grant recommendations from this committee. I relayed that there was frustration among the committee about the need to make some cuts, and my sense, so I hope they fairly represented what I heard here, which is that because we didn't really have a minute available to review at that time, but my sense was that this committee did its best to try and be fair, with budgetary restrictions. Also, at a recent council meeting, just a few weeks ago, we did give staff direction to, just going back to the affordable housing thing, which has been a key area of interest for this committee for some time. We did give staff direction to start exploring some, or at least come back to us with feasibility of what it would take as far as staff time, to do some exploration of some innovative housing ideas, including potentially smaller units of housing, decoupled from the cost of parking and things like that, and all the, it's a complex issue, obviously, affordable housing and affordability of market rate housing, but we did give some, I think, interesting direction to staff. So hopefully we get some more ideas about how to add more housing, particularly affordable housing in Palo Alto, coming out of those recommendations. And one other thing, I think several members of this committee or this commission might be interested, including two who are not here currently, which is relating to use of surveillance and data gathering technology by government agencies, specifically by city agencies such as the police department. I was actually, kind of a lead author on a colleague's memo that we just submitted, along with council members Berman, Scharf, and Schmid, that will be coming to council for a first glance and then probably sent to Policy and Services Committee. So that'll be coming up on April 25th in about a week and a half. And it suggests that the Policy and Services Committee and the city as a whole consider adopting an overarching policy regarding technology that might have a surveillance application, so that when any city department, whether it's the police department or say planning department, keeping track of how many, trying to track pedestrians or bikers or drivers or whatever, anytime a city department picks up a new technology that might raise concerns about surveillance or privacy, that we ought to perhaps have a standard operating procedure prior to implementation, to establish perhaps things like a use policy, a data retention policy, data access policy, to ensure that we're doing our due diligence to preserve privacy and address those concerns in the 21st century. So I know that Santa Clara County is also considering something currently. They're actually, one of their committees is discussing it, or was discussing it today, something similar for county level agencies that would parallel this. So just something to maybe keep an eye on if you're interested in that sort of stuff.
Thank you, Councilmember Walbach. Anyone have any questions or comments? All right, well then let's move on to our staff liaison report. Well, Minka's not here, but does our wonderful Minka substitute have anything?
I have something very brief, and you should have all received an email from Rob DeGoose, who's the Director of Community Services. It would have come from Rob, right?
It came to HRC, then I forwarded it on.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
About the Mayfet Parade.
Oh, right,
and
right.
if you're interested in being a VIP
Right.
at the Mayfet Parade, then just let Mary know, and she'll get that set up and arranged.
What day is that?
May 7th. I read email.
I got the email, but I didn't remember. I did see it as well.
And that's all I have.
Yeah, I participated in the Mayfet a few times, and it's really a lot of fun. So if any of you are interested, definitely.
I watched it.
It's great, yeah.
And
You
there's
get
a
to-
carnival after too.
And one year, Joe Simidian bought us all ice cream, so that was pretty awesome as well. Anybody else have questions or comments? All right, so do we have, let's talk about our tentative agenda for the next meeting. The biggest thing on the agenda right now is that the chair and vice chair's terms are expiring, so we will need to have an election. So if people are interested in stepping into leadership, just bear that in mind. The next thing, I think, is that we'll probably want to follow up on our planning for the community forums. And I will hopefully have updates by then on the mental health event that I'm hoping to start planning with Minka. And if any of you, as I said, are interested in getting on board with either something that I'll be planning or that you'd like to plan, make sure you contact leadership or contact Minka so that we know what's going to be coming up, so we can put you on the calendar as well. Are there any other topics that we should raise for next time?
I have a question regarding the council study session on May 9th. Do we need to work on it a little bit further?
That was canceled. Did you not?
Postponed, yeah.
Postponed, yeah. Didn't, but
I
didn't
thought
you
it was
guys?
rescheduled for May.
Rescheduled to May 9th, that's what I heard.
But then it was.
I think it was rescheduled again.
Again.
I think I sent an email out.
She did.
Oh, I didn't get that.
So when's
I
it?
didn't get it.
She did.
I don't think a date has been.
It has not been settled.
No.
Okay, so.
No, no, so thank
No,
you
I
for
didn't.
raising that then. Yeah, I thought that Minka send it out to everybody.
So,
Oh.
And
Well,
maybe it's
I
just
always
leadership.
remember the
No.
first cancellation.
Was
No,
everybody-
I didn't have.
maybe.
No,
it wasn't-
council has so much on the agenda for May 9th. Sorry, I don't mean to put you on
You're
the
so
spot,
relieved.
Councilmember Womack.
Okay.
There's apparently so much on the calendar already that they just can't spend an hour
This is
doing
not-
HRC stuff. It may be that we won't have a chance to meet with council till after our retreat in August, so it may be into the fall before we finally get a chance to talk to them. So, there's just unfortunately, it is what it is. Council's really, really, really busy. So I would have liked to do it before the summer, but we have to take the time frame that we can get. So yeah, so if you have May 9th on your calendar, you can delete that, and then Minka will let us know when we do get rescheduled. Are there other things that we want to talk about for next time?
Yeah, at some risk, I would like to ask about this. One of the comments made at the forum was that we need to address housing displacement to maintain diversity. And you just mentioned, Councilman Wolbach just mentioned the direction to city planning staff. And I wonder if there's some role for the HRC either to write a memorandum of understanding or to ask if there's something we can do that's appropriate to our resources. If we can have somebody from the staff here to give us an update that we can respond to, or...
Okay. Well, then I would suggest send an email to Minka and ask her those questions so that we can try to figure out what staff might be able to do to help us frame that issue. Because I'm not sure exactly how to frame it as an agenda item.
Okay, it's something I care very much about. And to the extent that we can even add an opinion piece, I would like to suggest that.
Yeah, I don't know that we've, at least in my time on the HRC, I don't know that we've ever done memos or that kind of thing. We have sometimes sent resolutions, and sometimes a bit on the symbolic level, but council generally likes us to send more practically oriented pieces. But that's not to say that we can't kind of weigh in with an opinion piece that could be very powerful. So I think that's something but we need to know how to frame it as an agenda item, and I don't know quite how to do that. So maybe Minka and Mary can help us figure out how to do that. So I was going to say, did Mary capture that? But then I remember Mary's not taking notes anymore because, we're switching to a transcription service. So I know I keep looking at Mary like, she's not typing. This is so weird. Okay, but definitely follow up with Minka. And then leadership will talk to her, and we'll figure out a way to get that on the agenda. Anything else that people would like us to consider for next time?
If we have an idea for a speaker or somebody would like, should we just submit it to Minka?
Well, yeah, I think right now we're still doing our immigrant experience series. So would this be something that's on topic with that series, or is this a different type of thing?
Well, I'm interested in this person who started this organization called Civity. I just think, as a follow-on to the Implicit Bias Conference, I think it would be a very interesting talk. So yeah, it's not exactly in line with the immigrant experience, but it is tangentially.
On the other hand, we haven't lined up anyone for the May immigrant speakers.
Yeah?
No, not yet. So I don't know how.
Yeah, I think that we probably would want to have one speaker per meeting. So if we take a hiatus from the speaker series, then yes, I mean definitely. But if we do line up someone for the immigrant speaker series, then we might have to figure out when to work in the other speaker.
Well, why don't I ask her, and then if May's available and she's available, then we'll fill that slot. If you want to just say that you'll abdicate for May. Oop.
Well, I would say, why don't you send the speaker's name and contact information to Minka,
Okay.
and then Minka can coordinate for us, because she and Mary have to kind of run the agenda and know who's going to actually be speaking.
Well, I
and all
would
that.
call this person first. I don't even know if she's interested at all. So I'll call her, and then I'll say our staff person will get in touch with you if she's interested. That's how I would want to do it.
Okay.
Because it'll be out of left field if Minka calls her.
Well, but it'll be out of left field if you contact her too, right? Because she doesn't.
No, because she was introduced to me.
I see.
By Mary Jane.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that sounds good.
Which one? Oh, the woman who said with the other topic that she. I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Yeah,
Oh, the one that you forwarded. Yeah, yeah. I thought I was interested in that. But
Mhm.
what do you have in mind?
I can't remember her name.
I don't either. But her concern was that there's other issues of bias that are right here in our town that are not necessarily related to.
I'll find the email and resurface it.
Okay, so yeah, so I think this is all fine. Again, just to caution you, on both of you, though, don't actually schedule anybody until
Right.
we run this past Minka. Yeah. Okay, that would be great. All right. So if there's nothing else, then I think we are adjourned. Thank you all so much
Thank
for your
you.
participation.
You know, she's somebody who could come and doesn't have to be part of our agenda. She gets 3 minutes, right?